A.MOV campus. They lead Starting Point there, and it's going crazy great.
Great, thanks. Nice to see all you guys. Meet some new ones, but yeah, Wesson and I do lead with Valerie and Kevin, the group in San Ramon, and I've been it for 2 years, or two semesters, and I think
3 or 4, I think. 4 semesters.
So,
one was here, and then 3 in summer.
and it's what's great about it is every time it's a little bit different than the time before, and we end up touching on things in one session that the previous semester we didn't touch on that. And so it's I've known even as a facilitator and leader, I've grown in it as well. I've learned stuff. So this week we're touching on the law. And do we have people that are sharing?
We do, don't we? There's going to share this, yes, Jen and Rachel.
And can I just remind everybody to
Talk loud, please. Use your yell at children.
I'll go
your
first.
outside voice.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, so in keeping with the whole 4 points, I think I tried to narrow down my story into 4 chapters. If my story had 4 chapters, I think the first one would be Florida. I was born there. I lived there up until 2 years ago. My whole family lives there still. I'm the oldest of 5. I have 4 younger brothers. And like I said previously, I was born into a Christian home, and my parents took me to church constantly. I was enrolled at a private Christian school, and all my friends were Christians. I didn't know life without God. God was always, a part of our lives. There were Bible verses all over our walls. We were bringing friends to church. We were always witnessing, and my family just really made it a huge part of our lives. And that was really good, but I think what happened was with me, when I got to about middle school, I had this great relationship with the Lord. At the age of 4, I was saved, and I believe that I know I was very young, but I remember it so clearly, and I knew that Jesus Christ lived in my heart, and he had saved me from my sins, and that relationship was built even at that young of age, and Jesus had me at that point, and but my faith would take a lot of turns from there. And I think when I got to middle school, high school, and all those ideas and thoughts and self-esteem issues and looking around and just really wanting something, and when pain started to really enter my life, I thought, I don't feel relief, going to church. I don't see this joy and this freedom that everyone talks about. It just sounds like a bunch of rules to me, and I started to see that life was all about rules and laws, and I think it's funny that I'm sharing today, because it was really almost like an oppressive, this is the way we act at church. This is the way a Christian behaves. This is how a Christian girl behaves. And I had that down to science, but it didn't help my heart. And so when I got to high school and I wanted a boyfriend and all those issues, and I had weight issues and all those self-esteem things, I felt like, this God really doesn't make me feel better here inside. So, maybe it's on the outside that I can find something better. And so when I got to college, I would say that's truly when kind of rebellion set in. And it was almost like, I don't care, I don't want the faith of my parents, I want to discover what's out there. What is out there? Because there is something beyond this, and there is freedom. I know there is freedom. This doesn't feel like freedom. And so I had a very crazy year, and my parents and I were at odds, and I was not go back to my family church, and my dad said, well, listen, you have to go to church somewhere. So I started going to church at a church on the beach in Sanibel, Florida, and I met a guy named Tom. And so this is the second chapter of my family, and I knew that he was the one for me, and almost in a prophetic way, the second date, I told him, I know that God has a purpose for you in my life, and that you are supposed to be here. I wasn't expecting you this soon, but I know that you are supposed to be here, and which would have freaked a lot of guys out, but he knew too. So a few years later, we got married, and then a few years after that, we had our first baby girl. And Trinity was born, and I got real sick right after she was born and went to the hospital for 2 weeks. And after that, I got out and found out that I was pregnant again, and had 2 babies, and she was 10 and a half months old when he was born. So they're under a year apart. And I remember when I found out I was pregnant with him, that was the first time I was like, okay, this life I built, like, I mean, I have everything that I want, but this is crazy. Like, this is something I didn't expect at all. I mean, God, what are you doing? Where are you, God? And you know, we were going to church at this point, and I had also put on a lot of weight. And so after the birth of my son, this brings me to chapter 3, weight loss. My husband and I joined a gym, and we both managed to lose about 100 pounds each, and totally transformed our life. And but fitness took that hole that I wanted, that feeling of I need to be loved, and I need to do something. I really let fitness kind of become my God. Okay, and so so then that brings me to chapter 4. We were living in Florida, had a great life. We had gotten thin. I was happy and fabulous, and we moved out to California, and that was when it got really real. And God, I said, you know what? I am desperate. I'm lonely, and I call California my valley of trouble that He transformed into the gateway of hope. And that's from Hosea. And I just remember I cried out to Him, and I sought the Lord, and He answered me. He delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to Him are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And God just saved me when I was in the darkest day, you know, by myself. And He just came and whispered in my ear and totally became my Lord, and redeemed me at that moment, and everything fell into line. So that's where I am now. I'm living in the gateway of hope.
Awesome. It is. Great story. Ah, pardon me.
I'll look over here at you guys. I purposely sat over here so she couldn't do that. Okay, so I actually chose this week on purpose because it was Law and Rebellion, which sort of defines my life. I was brought up in a very strict Christian home, but it was all about the rules and what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to behave. And I just realized I never could behave properly. I just was never doing the right thing, and it was, I always wanted to do something different, not because I was trying to really be rebellious as much as there were so many rules I couldn't keep them straight. You know, don't do this and don't do that and don't do this. And kind of brings me to my first defining moment, which is twofold because it happened within about 2 weeks of each other. I was 16 and my dad died, and about 2 weeks later I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
And my defining moment was deciding to keep my child and raise her. And it was a really hard thing to do. And I was pretty ticked off about the whole thing too, because I thought, okay, yeah, everyone now knows I don't know how to behave. And everyone else thinks they can. I mean, that's just kind of the atmosphere I was in. And that kind of leads me into, there's a lot in between, but by the time I was in my very early 30s, I just realized that I had to figure it out. And I would listen to pastors on the radio and try and figure it out and that kind of thing. And I was going to church after a lot of years away and trying to figure it out. And what am I missing? Because apparently it's not working for me. And I remember hearing a pastor say, if you ask God to show Himself to you, He will. And I flipped off the radio, and I remember where I was on Van Owen at the end of Burbank Airport, driving down Van Owen. And I said, fine, Lord, if that's the way it is, you need to show yourself, because I'm done. I can't do it anymore. Sorry. And He really came in, and He changed so much. He just led me to the right church and to being more in touch with what was going on with my daughter at that point, who was in about junior high about that point. And at this church, it brings me to my third defining moment. I realized that all these Post-its I had started sticking to myself again about what I should be doing, you know, behave this way, behave that way, you're in church again, do this, do that. He at one point said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then do whatever you want. Because at that point, your behaviors start falling in line what God wants you to do. And this light bulb just went off, and I remember just sitting there just bawling, going, are you kidding me? Is that it? And it was an amazing moment for me. And it was very similar to a Celebrate Recovery class. It was that kind of a thing that the pastor was teaching, and it just really was the beginning of a huge change for me. And my fourth defining moment is I've finally gone back to school, and I'm going to graduate in June to get my business degree, and I'm really thrilled about that. So, that's my story.
Way to go.
Yeah. Awesome.
Great. Thank you. I think that's my favorite part of Starting Point is the sharing of the stories, because it really does help people open up, especially once they've told their story. They seem to be able to share more throughout as well. So, laws. This week we're supposed to have an assignment. Anybody do it? We're supposed to obey every.
But tonight driving here.
No.
That was the only time I obeyed. Come on.
That's good.
I was late.
Anybody have any revelation?
Yes, I felt very restricted, I have to say.
That's great.
What was interesting for me, I think I mentioned it to Marcy last week, that was something that I had talked to myself about in the new year. I'm not a resolution person, but I thought, I'm just going to be nicer behind the wheel. I'm trying to be a Christian woman behind the wheel. And then to have this put in front of me, it's like, man, and it was in front of me all week. And then I find I'm really lead-footed, and I go, oh, I'm going with the speed of traffic. Isn't that okay? I slowed down. I don't leave enough time. I found that out. I am going to be late most of the time if I drive the speed limit, so I have to leave earlier. But it was an amazing week for me. I don't know. I'm not a good driver.
Anybody else? I know I made the mistake of telling my wife, and she decided to take on the role of the Holy Spirit. Tell me where I was doing wrong.
Things are better left unsaid.
Yeah, I think so.
I had a couple of things kind of go through my mind. The first day that I first started searching, now, what is the law? So then I started thinking, oh, that makes a lot of sense, that we read the Bible, so we kind of have a better concept about what the guidance is there. And then on sometimes I thought, well, I just can't follow it right now, so I made up excuses to not follow it. And then I would try to figure out, then I'd try to justify why I was actually making that choice to do that, and so of course that ties right back to the Bible too. And then the other thing is I realized that actually in some ways is really bad, because I became so obsessed with following the laws that normally that's my time to pray. And so I became so obsessed with the laws that I wasn't even doing really what makes a difference. So that was...
Is that another justification?
No. I'm just saying that at what point is following the law so important that it's more important than praying?
But what a great illustration of how, we get into that trap anyways of all Christian.
Yeah,
It's a great illustration.